Drew, all you do is rant about things that aren't made by Apple. Drew, we know you're gonna hate the Note 9. Why should we care what you're gonna say? We know that you're gonna critique it because it's not made by Apple. I hate to burst all your bubbles, but my thoughts on the Note 9 are not very similar to my thoughts on the Pixelbook or the Surface Go or other products I had terrible experiences with. I did not have a terrible experience with the Note 9, and there's actually quite a bit of things I really like about it. And people who were expecting Apple Sheep Overdrive or me to just rip this phone apart, you're not gonna get that today, and I apologize. But what I'm really hoping for is the people out there who know I am biased towards Apple, who know I have a personal preference, can understand that that makes my enjoyment of the product and the things I think are really good about the Note 9 even more noteworthy for the... So without further ado, here has been my experience with the Galaxy Note 9. Now, there's definitely a lot of good things I want to get into, but I like saving the best for last. If I hate the product, I'll start with the good things. If I like the product, I'll start with the bad things. So let's just start with some of my criticisms of the Note 9. For one, let's just get this over with so it's not the entire review. The Bixby button. It's in a bad place, okay? For one, I don't think that a hands-free digital assistant should have a dedicated button. A lot of people compare this to the iPhone X and say, well, Apple has the Siri button. For one, you have to hold this button down to activate Siri. For two, this button is not dedicated just for Siri. It is a power button. You have to use it anyway. For three, you can turn off Siri so that holding the power button does nothing, in which case you would not have a useless button on your phone. You would just have the regular power button and nothing would change. With the Bixby button, you have an unmappable without getting third-party apps to remap the Bixby button, and even if you remap it to nothing, I still just think it's an unnecessary button for a phone. In my personal opinion, we don't need an extra button after power and volume, and they put it in a place that's very easy to confuse with the volume rocker. Oftentimes, I'll try to turn something down and I'll accidentally hit the Bixby button. Many people have also reported this. And if you absolutely have to have a button dedicated to Bixby, just put the volume a little bit lower, because ergonomically, it would be much easier to just have the volume more towards the center of the phone, so that's easier to reach. And then when you need to activate Bixby, you can stretch up a little bit higher. How they designed the Note 9 as it is, volume is very hard to get to when you're holding the phone with one hand, and I just find that unintuitive, especially when they put the Bixby button so close. The button should be not really there in the first place, or at least far away. Bixby, I tried to use her. She's, I know some people say she's better than Siri. Some people say she's worse. I don't really care which you prefer. She just doesn't need to have a dedicated button that's that close to the volume. And by the way, these are all nitpicky things about the device. The pros, I think, definitely outweigh the cons. So the next nitpicky thing I have about the Note 9 is the color options this year change drastically from country to country. So at least here in the US, I could not order just a basic black one like I got with the Galaxy S9 or my Galaxy Note 7. Back then, you had multiple color options. You could get a vibrant color like yellow or blue, but if you wanted just a standard silver or a standard black, they've always had that option. And this year, they decided not to do that. When they advertised the Note 9, they showed it in multiple different colors, but then only allowed like colors like basic black in certain countries. In countries like Germany, you only had blue and black and not pink. And here in America, you had pink or blue. Those were your only color choices. Which, see, I kind of understand the argument of Qualcomm Snapdragon chips can only be sold in the US, so that's why Samsung cannot sell the Exynos version here. There's contracts they have to abide by. There's certain laws of CDMA chips and stuff, so they cannot sell the Exynos version in the US. I get that a little bit. It's frustrating, but I understand it. The colors, that's completely dependent on Samsung. For whatever reason, they decided these colors are available in these countries, but not these colors. I have no idea why, and I also think it's just a little bit weird that you kind of force your entire user base to use a very, very vibrant, very, very drastically yellow S Pen. What if I don't want the yellow S Pen? Can I just get the regular black one? You gotta buy another pen. You gotta go find one, and then you'll have a yellow S Pen sitting around. And I just thought that was a little unnecessarily forceful, especially when we're talking about Samsung, which is the company about options. Still rocking the headphone jack for people who want it. Still rocking the stylus for people who want it. Includes headphones with the purchase, includes a fast charger. Samsung likes to boast about all of the options and the features their phone has. I find Bixby and the color limitations to be very hypocritical of what Samsung's message is. I will also say that my experience with Android this time around definitely did not change. It did not help that there is a water cooling system or a Snapdragon 845, which is becoming like a mildly new CPU at this point, given the S9 had it back in March. Now we're in September, so it's not like this is a brand new fresh CPU. Yes, I am comparing the Snapdragon 845 version because that's the one I can get. I understand that in other countries you can get the Exynos CPU, but you're coming from my perspective, you're coming from my experience, that's not available here, so that's not not what I'm taking into consideration. That's also not really a problem I have to worry about with iPhones because all the iPhone 10s and all the iPhone 8s have the A11 chip in any country they get sold in. So the Snapdragon chip and all this RAM and the water cooling system and everything still didn't really change my day-to-day issues I have with Android. There were still instances in which I was using picture-in-picture with YouTube, and then background play would cover up that pop-up player and cover up the background, and it would just make everything look cluttered. And surprisingly, even in the first week of using this device, Twitter crashed multiple times. The stock normal Twitter app, and once again, I'm not saying this is Samsung's fault. It's most likely Twitter's fault for not optimizing their app correctly or not building Twitter properly for the Snapdragon 845. I just think it's funny that when you're boasting about 6 gigs of RAM or 8 gigs of RAM and the Snapdragon 845 and a water cooling system, you still can't consistently run like basic apps. There were times I would be going through my messages and a pop-up would appear and it would just say, "Messages has stopped working. We have to restart the app now." Not that that destroys the entire use of the phone. You know, you just close the app and open it again. It's fine. I just find that a little bit bizarre, and I got a lot of people when I watch Note 9 review saying, "This thing is a beast. This thing has all the tech specs. This thing is maxed out. You know, $1,000. It has all the best tech specs." Tech specs don't matter if the software is not optimized properly, and that's why I'm bringing this up, because you can have a real hardcore tank of a phone with all this RAM and all this CPU, water cooling system and whatever, and still run into basic apps like messages and Twitter that result in crashing. This isn't even a new display resolution. This isn't even a new aspect ratio, and I will still open some third-party apps that say that this app does not support this screen size. Do you want to stretch it out to fill the screen size? So hats off to Samsung for doing the work for the third parties, to stretching many third-party apps to fit their aspect ratio, but I honestly just think it's weird that this aspect ratio has been around since the Galaxy S8, and there are still many apps on the Android App Store that are not optimized for this. And once again, this isn't really Samsung's fault. It just shows you the problems you get with Android because of this fragmented market, because of how diverse and large this market is. App Store developers out there can't optimize their apps for every single phone on the market, and it results in a fairly inconsistent experience, especially when you're buying something made by Samsung and not Google. And I just think that's a little bit annoying when you run into this problem after spending $1,000 on this phone. Another little criticism I had, similar to the Galaxy S9, is even though you've got your water cooling system and your Snapdragon 845, the 4K at 60 recording is limited to 5 minutes. This is not a problem I had on my iPhone 10, which I got nearly a year ago. These phones are both the same price. The difference is one came out at the end of 2017 and this one's coming out at the end of 2018. And I just think it's ridiculous that there's still a lot of hardware and software advantages that this phone has. If this is brand new and the same price, it should be smoking this guy. Like for the Note 9 unboxing, there's actually only 2 cameras I own that can do 4K at 60. It's this Blackmagic camera that we're recording with and my iPhone. So when we're unboxing the Note 9, we have the Blackmagic pointed directly at me, and then as our B camera, I use my iPhone 10 because it can record 4K at 60. I do a lot of vlogs over on Talos of Talks, being able to sit down and just vent about the day or document what's going on at glorious 4K at 60 because cameras can do that now, even on a smartphone, which is great. It's kind of funny to me that this thing has to stop you at 5 minutes. As in, if I wanted to do an unboxing for a different product or a different video and I wanted the Note 9 to be my B camera, I would have to set a timer every 5 minutes and go, "Oh crap, gotta reset the Note 9, click, there we go." Which is what confuses me about the new tech spec, the new monumental achievement. 512 gigs, that's a half a terabyte in a phone. With expandable storage, you can have a full terabyte in a phone. The phone's not very friendly to large files, because as soon as you want to record 4K at 60 for more than 5 minutes, you have to stop recording and you have to hit start again, which to people filming concerts, people filming graduations of their kids, that's seriously gonna be a nuisance. That's gonna get in the way, and that's one more thing, one more step you're gonna have to take that you wouldn't have to take with an iPhone 10. So I'm not expecting everyone to have that problem. Please refer to the video I did called "This is How I Review Things," in which I explained that I consider product reviews to be like Amazon. You should say a bunch of reviews and you can look at the perspective of one guy and see, is it applicable to my lifestyle? So if you do not record a ton of 4K at 60 videos, the point I'm trying to make here probably isn't very relevant, and that's okay. I'm just telling you my my firsthand experience, the fact that this limits you to 5 minutes at 4K at 60 is a step backwards. From switching from my iPhone 10 to the Note 9, this is something I'm missing out on. This is a downgrade, not an advancement. I will also note that when vlogging with the Note 9 on Talos of Talks, we got a lot of negative comments about the quality, about the microphone, and sometimes it was mixed. I will give credit where credit is due. A lot of people seem to prefer the Note 9, but I'm not exactly sure how much of that is placebo effect, because we would get a large amount of likes on one comment that says, please don't vlog on the Note 9 anymore. And then we would also get a handful of comments that say, hey, Note 9 looks great. And then they would edit it at the end of the video and go, okay, never mind. And I think a big problem for me when vlogging with the Note 9 is there is not a rear-facing microphone. And a lot of people don't realize this. You got all this stuff on the back of the Note 9 display. You've got your dual cameras, your flash, your heart rate sensor, your fingerprint reader, Note 9, Samsung, and all that, and yet there's not a microphone that's facing outward. So I want to vlog at 4K at 60, like I've mentioned. So I'm holding the rear-facing camera, the better camera, at me when I'm vlogging, and the sound is simply just not as good because it's using, I'm not sure which microphone, one at the bottom, maybe one at the top, but whichever microphone it is, it's just not as clear, and you can very easily see, like on the back of all iPhones, there's a little hole in the camera cutout or near the camera. That's the microphone for when you're filming someone talk or something's going on in front of the phone. You can get that sound quality and it sounds a lot better. Whereas with the Note 9, if I wasn't a foot away from the camera, it suddenly becomes very hard to hear me. So just another critique I have for the Note 9.
John Prosser thinks you can fight the Apple sheep. What did you say in your video? That it was gonna be a competition of boxing? Throwing boxes? You use a green screen, son! You ain't the king of boxes! I have more boxes than you could ever show!
So yeah, we just had dinner. I'm back home with the family for tonight. And I know a lot of people during the live streams have actually been asking about Pickle. Hey Pick, how's it going? So in case some of you were wondering, Pickle does not live with me anymore, but he's still here at my parents' house. He's licking my feet, Pick. You don't need to do that. Other issue that I ranted a lot about with the Galaxy S9 that I'm gonna have to bring up here with the Note 9 because they didn't change anything. It's $1,000, but the biometrics are still the same. While I applaud Samsung for having 3 different ways of logging into the phone, there's face unlock, there's iris unlock, and there's a fingerprint scanner. None of them really are perfect. They all work sometimes, but at least in my instance, what I've found a completely underrated topic is iris and face unlock combined. The smart unlocking tool that they recommend you use does not work very well at all. There are so many instances I'll be doing everyday normal things, perfect lighting, everything's fine, and I'll hold my phone at me and it still will not unlock. It gets very, very frustrating because I've set up my irises, I've set up my face, and it still can't unlock. As I've mentioned many times, I have a skin disease known as psoriasis, so the fingerprint reader does not work for me. But even if it did, I still think that it's kind of at an awkwardly high place. Marquez brought this up, which is a good point. It doesn't really rest where your finger would normally rest while holding the Note 9. No one like naturally puts their finger way up there because then pressing the home button is a lot harder. So I wish they would have put the fingerprint reader maybe a little bit lower, maybe a little bit larger. And it's especially ironic when you do wireless charging because they want you to put the Note 9 on an inductive charging pad. But that means that in order to access Touch ID, you have to pick the phone up, and that's just another step. And I've heard mixed things about this, so I don't know if it's something wrong with my irises or my face, but at least in my experience, Face ID has been way more reliable than iris unlock and face unlock, which if I'm in direct sunlight, iris unlock does not work very well. If I'm in the dark, face unlock will not work and iris has to take over. Iris unlock requires the phone to be held in a very precise way that they literally have to show you your irises. So they're like, look, put your eyes in these circles, line everything up. And it's also sad because when you're holding the Note 9, it has to tell you a bunch of times, hold your phone upright, hold your phone like this, hold your phone like this, open your eyes all the way. To the point that sometimes when you unlock the device, they will literally make the display brighter to shine more light on your face so they can see you better, which I think is completely unintuitive and really, really backwards. And I never have that problem with my iPhone 10 because even if I'm in the dark, if I'm in broad daylight, if I have sunglasses on, Face ID just works reliably. And with iris unlock and face unlock, yeah, it works here and there, but definitely you have to be way more precise. That's why they have to show you a picture of your eyes and they have to give you instructions while looking at the phone. Hold phone more upright, hold phone more eye level, link up eyes with circle. So if you're used to the Note 9, you probably know the sweet spot of where to hold it. But I was just used to the iPhone 10, which can detect my face and unlock from a variety of different angles and distances, that it was just kind of a stretch switching to this guy, which, like I've mentioned, is newer in the same price. So I would expect biometrics should be a bit more perfected because they've had more time. But no, I wish they could have replicated Face ID a little bit more with the Note 9. And as we're coming on the downhill of my nitpicky criticisms of the reason I'm not a fan of the Note 9, they advertised this phone with Fortnite so heavily, which I just think is silly. Yes, Apple advertised that the new MacBooks can play Fortnite, but it was definitely not like the flagship thing. They didn't have a keynote where they literally dedicated time on stage to saying, this phone is so good at running Fortnite, and we'll give you 15,000 V-Bucks if you order this phone and an exclusive skin. They really partnered with Epic on this. And also, kind of a jerk move to the rest of Android, Samsung, to be like, we want Fortnite on Android, but we get it. No one else can get it. Screw you, Pixel. Screw you, OnePlus. Screw everyone who wants Fortnite. It's gonna be us because we have money and we paid Epic more. I mean, yeah, you're getting exclusives, and the business world is feisty out there, but I'm just saying that's kind of mean, just to be like, Fortnite, Android on Samsung only. Can't get it on the Play Store. They got to the point where in the Play Store, they literally have to write specifically, Fortnite by Epic is not available, because so many people were searching the Play Store for Fortnite and they couldn't find it. I've played Fortnite on the Note 9. It's alright. Frame rates are kind of wishy-washy. Sometimes you'll be playing it and it's like, okay, you know what? I got a consistent 30 FPS. This is good. And then you'll turn around and the frames just dip and they drop and they'll suddenly be below 15 and they get really bad. And I'm just like, you were built to run on this. This is like what you advertised yourself for, and they still drop frames. Fortnite is just such a mobile port. It's such an obvious, this was meant to be played on a console or desktop, and they're trying their very best to dumb it down for mobile, that I just don't think the controls are very good. The game doesn't run consistently because clearly it was not intended to be running on a device like this. And I just think it's really funny that Samsung advertised it so heavily with the Note 9, because it runs fine. It's not ideal. And also, this is $1,000. There's like a dozen devices that are way cheaper than this that can run Fortnite miles better. If you want Fortnite on the go, get a Switch. That will run it better. Get an Xbox One S. I think you can get those for like $200 now, and that will run Fortnite way better than this can. So just advertising Fortnite with the Note 9, I just thought was bizarre. Okay, so now you've heard my criticisms. You've heard of my complaints with the phone. So hopefully you Apple sheep out there are like, yeah, Drew, grill the Note 9. Or all you haters out there can't stand me right now. Either way, I understand. Let's get into some of the things I like about the Note 9. So first of all, right off the bat, the display is gorgeous. The amount of detail I can get out of YouTube videos and Twitch streams and pictures I'm looking at is just amazing. And I also love to death big phones. I love big displays. I love getting as much display in my pocket as I possibly can, to the point that when I had to switch back to my 10, I was like, this is small. This is like, I don't like how small this is. I prefer the Note 9 size. Also, just the detail and the color and the crispness is really worth it. And I can see what YouTube means when they say the Note 9 is the best device to watch YouTube videos on. Because honestly, the HDR content you can see is beautiful. And I love watching content on my Note 9. There were times I could have watched YouTube videos on the TV, but because this was in my pocket, I would just like lay down on the couch or lay down on my bed and just watch videos on the Note 9 because of how enjoyable and detailed it looks. It was kind of annoying that, you know, I would want to zoom in on the YouTube video so it fills in the black bars on the sides. If I rotated the phone and went back to normal and then rotated back to landscape, it wouldn't remember my setting. It would zoom it back out again. But still, watching videos, Netflix, YouTube on here is glorious. And to go along with that beautiful display are the stereo speakers. I love the sound you get from both the earpiece and the bottom-facing speaker. I don't know why they don't turn on Dolby Atmos by default, because once you turn on Dolby Atmos, the sound, it's so loud, it's so detailed and crisp. And, you know, like watching YouTube on the iPhone 10 is fine. The stereo speakers are pretty good and the quality is decent, but I was always amazed to be in the middle of watching a video on this, because I'm always like, I'm getting so much sound just from the Note 9. In fact, when I was at John Morrison's place and he was filming his secret office tour, the Note 9 was my daily driver, had my SIM card and everything. He was showing off the piano and he wanted a shot where the camera pans up to me and I kind of wave from the guest office. I found a YouTube live stream just called piano music, and I just started playing it from the Note 9 speakers. I put it on the piano and just kind of pretended to be playing it. He thought I was actually playing the piano for a little while. He was just like, wow, that's a good song. You should play that. Obviously, he may have figured it out, but I'm not saying the Note 9 speakers are as good as like a professional synthesizer or anything. I'm just saying they're very loud and they're very clear that you could fool people into thinking it was actually a much bigger pair of speakers. So stereo speakers with Dolby Atmos on the Note 9, absolutely wonderful. The other thing the Note 9 is really good at is taking still images. I'm not the kind of guy who's gonna put the iPhone 10 and the Note 9 next to each other and you can be like, this one gets color a little bit differently and this contrast is a little bit. You can go into the photos and just edit the saturation and make these pictures look almost identical. But regardless, front-facing camera looks great. Rear-facing camera stills look great. Pictures always seem to blow me away. The saturation. I know some people say that Note phones tend to oversaturate things between the display and the pictures. I disagree. I really like the color balance they go with. And when you see something red on the Note 9, it is hard red. And when you see something blue, it is dark blue. And I just love that in a phone. I like the way they calibrate their camera, still images, and the display. Even though there's a lot of Apple users out there who don't care for that. The next biggest thing that I've never really given much credit to in a smartphone, but this is the first time I've ever going to actually take time out of my review and give a lot of credit to the Note 9 with battery life. Thankfully, mine hasn't exploded, but the 4,000 milliamp hour battery is insane to be like, at the end of the day, I would end with my phone at like 60%, 50% battery. And I use the Note 9 a lot. Maybe it's because I'm used to just dropping my smartphones on Qi chargers wherever I'm sitting. If I'm in the gaming room, there's a Qi charger. If I'm in the tech room, there's a Qi charger. If I'm at home, there's a Qi charger there. I'm just used to doing that. And that's usually why my iPhone 10 never died on me. It wasn't because the battery lasted all day. It was because I had Qi chargers wherever I went. Since I was dropping the Note 9 on Qi chargers wherever I went, the battery on this thing was always above 50%. That I had to literally go out of my way to try to get this battery to die. To this day, and all the times I've used the Note 9 for filming, for getting on airplanes and boarding passes and texting while I'm waiting for my flight and using my phone during the entire flight, I never got the battery to die on this thing. Normally, I usually say in my videos, I don't really care that much about battery because if the experience is crappy, who cares that the battery is long? But my experience was mild. You know, there were definitely problems like I listed at the beginning of this video, but for the most part, I could do a lot of the same stuff that I needed my iPhone to do on here. Yes, there were some extra steps, like I couldn't AirDrop anymore, couldn't use iMessage anymore, so that kind of thing would get kind of complicated. But it was not as disappointing as an experience as was the Surface Go. You know, I had sort of expectations for how that product was going to work. It didn't meet those expectations. I thought the Pixelbook, you know, was going to be bad, and it was bad, but it was way worse than we thought, which made me think it was okay to do the Apple Sheep Overdrive bit. But with the Note 9, I can't really say it was just so terrible I can't stand it anymore, because I'm going to be switching to Android because of this collaboration I'm doing with For the Love of Tech. When the new Pixel 3 or Pixel Ultra, sounds like it's real now, will be coming out, I'll be switching to that for a month. So when switching to the Note 9, I was trying to get really, really comfortable with it. I was trying to be like, this is what Android's good at. I'm going to try to adjust to it. And I felt pretty adjusted. I felt like I could totally make the switch to the Note 9 if I needed to. If someone was paying me, you know, a certain amount of money to just stick with Android and not use an iPhone, I wouldn't enjoy it. You know, I'm still not convinced that Android is better than an iPhone. And especially because we haven't seen the actual rival to the Note 9 yet. Once the iPhone XS Max or whatever comes out, Note 9 versus that phone is probably going to be fairly interesting. But this phone made me realize a lot of the flaws of the iPhone 10. You know, the battery on this thing, switching back to it, I definitely notice now. It's like, oh crap, the iPhone's already at 20%? I gotta charge it again? This thing would normally be at like 70. Between fast wireless charging and the fast charger included in the box, that's amazing. The fact that they're able to get such a large battery to charge so quickly and fit it in a phone alongside a stylus. I'll also say that I committed to the stylus. I tried to use it as much as I could. I have a lot of questions to ask John Morrison, so I would take out that S Pen anytime I thought of a question to ask John, and I would write it down here. I quickly realized, though, going back a little bit into criticisms, I don't like the stylus on a smartphone. I hear a lot of people say it's for productivity, it's good for jogging down notes, but this is such an expensive and yet not ideal, not fun way of taking notes. The common counter argument I could hear is people who like to make lists, like groceries or reminders, which you can do with the simple keyboard, and I think you can text that into a phone faster. You can type down notes a lot easier, but then I heard people say like they're in algebra class or they're in calculus and they need to type, you know, extended math equations with square roots in exponents and that kind of thing typing is not better, which I can understand, but you can get a stylus writing experience way better than this because you're spending $1,000 and the S Pen feels very hollow, very cheap, very small, not like the ideal handwriting experience, but maybe it's because I'm used to the Apple Pencil. But even if you don't want to spend $100 on a stylus, you can get a very decent stylus like this one we found from Pandora, which is not paying for this video in any way. It's just a stylus we found that you can get on Amazon for like $30 and it's compatible with the budget iPad. So you could spend like under $400 on a tablet that is the size of an actual piece of paper, because that's the issue I kept running into whenever I would try to take notes on the Note is there's nowhere to rest my palm. Usually when I'm writing notes on a piece of paper, I like to rest my palm down somewhere so I can write faster. With this, I have to hold the phone and kind of hover the stylus over that, and it makes my handwriting worse. The Note display goes curved off, and that means when you're writing notes on the edge, it's like, zip, and the S Pen slips off quite often. So I get it if you like a stylus, if you like taking notes with your hand. I can understand that. I can respect that. I'm just saying I don't think the Note is the best way to do it. I think we can do it, but is it really the best for it? Would you be better off just spending your money on an S9 if you want Android and you want Samsung hardware? Don't pay like an extra $200 just so you can have that crappy stylus, because for one, you have to get it in bright yellow, which is kind of annoying. And also, this is a very small display, even though for a smartphone, the display is huge in comparison to the iPhone 10. This is a very, very large display, and still, when you're taking notes, I still find it to be a little bit too small, and there are very, very cheap options out there you can buy to get a stylus that is full size to be writing on a display that takes up an actual piece of paper with palm rejection, like writing on an iPad. Or for devices like an iPad Pro, you can get a 120 hertz display in which there will be little to no latency, and you can even configure iPad Pros to have half a terabyte of storage, which people seem to act like was this monumental achievement with the Note 9. I don't really see how it's a giant change if it costs more. It's like, wow, you rose the price of a phone and now the storage is larger. It's like, well, yeah, I would hope so. What if they just rose the price of a phone and didn't change anything? That would be kind of dumb. We can put 512 gigs into phones, people. Like, if you ever watch Everything Apple Pro, they lifted a 512 gig chip out of an iPad Pro and they just soldered it into an iPhone 7. iPhones, iPads, they use almost the same soldering chips. It's just something they swap out at the factory. It's not that Apple couldn't put a 512 gig chip into an iPhone. They just knew it would cost $1,300, so they decided not to do that. Samsung went ahead and did that, and that's how you now have Android phones that cost more than iPhones, given the maxed out iPhone 10 with tax is probably like $1,200 here in the US. This thing, $1,250 if you want to get the 512 gig version, meaning it's like $1,300 with tax. So Apple is now the cheaper alternative. Samsung's getting more expensive, Apple's getting cheaper this year, working on more budget phones. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that I had a bad experience with the Note 9. It does quite a lot of things. It has quite a lot of features packed into it, and if you're looking for the phone with all of the features listed, this is probably the best way to go. But I also have to say, is it the best way to go? Because you can get a lot of these experiences that are offered in this package for much cheaper in separate devices. It's great that you want to merge them all into one device, and I can respect that, but in my opinion, I prefer having devices that are dedicated to doing one thing, not one device that's desperately trying to do a bunch of different things, like jogging down notes. I can understand if you want to write down notes with a stylus. I don't think this is the best way to do that. There are better, cheaper alternatives out there that will allow you to. Or I want to play Fortnite on the go. You can do that on the Note, but there's also better ways to do that with another device. Maybe collectively it's more expensive, and that can be your counter argument against me. But Drew, I don't want an iPad. I don't want a Nintendo Switch. I want a phone that does all these things. Okay, that's fine, because this has got you covered. Not a fan of Android. I'm not a fan of the price point being so expensive, and you still run into problems like Twitter crashing, messages crashing. You're spending this much money on a phone. I feel like you should get a little bit more of a perfected experience. Not that iOS is perfect, but I can use Twitter and messages and not have to worry about those crashing too often. And I'm running iOS 12 beta. I'm running beta updates, and I've had less problems than I've had with the stock Android experience on the Note. So overall, if I'm gonna rate this phone, I'd give it like a B or a B plus. Not a bad time at all. I would happily switch to this for a month for a challenge or something, but we've got iPhones around the corner, so I'm probably gonna pay more attention to that. But the experience was overall fairly enjoyable. There were a lot of holdups and a lot of setbacks, but also a lot of motion forwards and advancements that I did not get with my iPhone, between battery life and the speaker quality and the display quality and the size. Overall, I enjoyed the Note 9. I'd recommend it to people who need one phone to do everything for them. That's just definitely not me. I'm not the type of guy who needs my phone to have an S Pen, have a headphone jack, have Fortnite. I'm the kind of guy that needs my phone to just kind of work reliably, like not have apps crash constantly. And if I need to record 4K at 60 for more than 5 minutes, that's going to be very important to me. AirDrop is very important to me. So I definitely still am going to call out that ecosystem defense argument that my iPhone still has and the Note does not compare to. No, just because Samsung is releasing a smart speaker, that does not mean that Note has an ecosystem. That's not what an ecosystem is. You can't just be like, refrigerator, Drew. Ecosystem. It's not just putting your logo on things. It's about making devices communicate with each other efficiently. And I just don't really have that with the Note, but yeah, not gonna hate on it. Not gonna tell you this is a terrible product. Not gonna tell you not to buy the Note 9. It's been great. Could be better. If I was to recommend anything to Samsung, it would be make the phone cheaper. I don't think they should be selling $1,000 Note phones. Get rid of the Bixby button. Allow more stock Android to get in there if people don't want to put up with Samsung skins. Maybe make that a boot up option. Like when you're first turning on the phone, you can pick log into Samsung account or stick with stock Android. And if you stick with stock Android, they'll just get rid of Bixby. They'll get rid of their bloatware and just give you a Pixel-esque experience. That would probably make their sales do a lot better. And one last thing for Samsung to remember, stop with the Apple hating advertising. It's really cringy and it doesn't make any sense. No one walks into an Apple store and says, I'm thinking about how powerful the Note 9 is. Your Note 9 crashes Twitter regularly and messages. Stop saying it's powerful. It can't record video for more than 5 minutes. It's powerful. Samsung, your phone sucks at running Fortnite just like every other phone does. Not saying the iPhone 10's good at running Fortnite. It's just that Minecraft still isn't optimized for this display. It kills me. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of the Galaxy Note 9. Am I being too fair? Am I being not fair enough? I'd love to hear all your thoughts and disagreements down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.